Okay.
Hey, Sheena, we're going to go live any second now. Who do you want to do a shout out to?
You know what? I want to do a shout out to Spirit, to Source, to God, Goddess, Great Spirit, Higher Power. Because of Spirit, we are universally taken care of all the time, and we are always walking our path with our little tiny hand in Spirit's big giant hand.
How could we
And
not do a shout out to Spirit? Here we
that's
go.
it's all.
Sheena Metal. You're a
Hi.
psychic medium. I love that. Spiritual counselor. You're an intuitive, emotional empath. You specialize in all these amazing things. You've got churches. You've got psychic abilities. You've got it all going on. And you guys, we're going to talk to her today for as long as we want to
Nice.
because she is here and she is now. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, my friend?
I am fabulous. I saw just a little bitty head pop up there on the screen, like in the
I
corner of
know.
the screen.
I know. I know. When
Yeah.
we first started the show and I looked like this, it was because I was putting him down.
That's
That
gonna
is
be your
Cullen.
yeah.
Cullen is the love of my life, and he was born on Easter Sunday last year, and we started fostering him when he was 3 days old. They found him in an alley, and they were going to euthanize him, and they called the
No.
rescue, and we were fostering a litter of 4 orange tabbies, and they said, "Hey, we got this little guy, 3 days old. The only way he'll stop screaming is if we put him in the basket with the tabbies. Will you take him too?" And
Uh-huh.
I held him. He was this big, and I held him in my hand. And I said, "That's it. It's you and me, buddy." And I was
All
in love.
right. I think that like cats definitely pick their people, you
Oh
know?
God, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I've had cats show up on my doorstep and I'm like, okay, if I come back in 5 hours and you're still there, I'll give you something to eat. 5 hours later, it's like, "Ah, okay, let me find something.
And then you
Next
have a
day, if you're
cat for
still
20
here,
years.
you can come inside and drink something.
Yes,
And
exactly.
5 years later, still have the cat.
Yes, if you're still here, you can sleep in my bed. That's
Yes,
and then it's over.
exactly. So we got to talk about some of these cool things that I
Please.
completely glossed over the last time that we were in the green room together. And I want to know about you are into the paranormal for sure,
Sure.
but the thing that I skipped over when I read about you was that you are a paranormal survivor.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I want to understand that.
Yeah, that's a weird term. Everybody asks me what that means. I think people aren't sure, and I maybe nobody refers to it that way. Maybe that's me. I grew up in a very active, negative, haunted house when I was a kid, and we didn't know really what to do about it. It was in the 70s. Nobody talked about it, and my mom wasn't even talking about her own psychic medium gifts at the time. Um, my father was sort of very removed emotionally, and probably if he had been of our generation, would have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So the combination, and I was in puberty, so the combination of the three of us was sort of the perfect storm for the paranormal. Plus, this house, that the ground it was on, Indian burial ground. I mean, everything that you can imagine, right? And so it was terrifying, and there was no one to talk to about it. My father was in complete denial about it. Years later, in his 80s, he sort of admitted to it like he'd always believed, but that was very typical for him.
Wow.
Um, I didn't even talk to my mom about it for years. And so I sort of carried this thing with me as this anomaly that I thought had only happened to us. And then right about the late 80s, the early 90s, stories started appearing. That was when the talk shows were really big, like the Geraldo
Uh-huh.
and the Maury Povich, and shows started appearing about different things. I remember that Vicki Lawrence had a show, and the people on the show were what we now know in the paranormal community as the famous San Pedro haunting here in Southern California. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, I saw that dark thing with wings, and oh, that happened to me." And so we just started really dialoguing about it and kind of healing each other. And then in the beginning of the moving into the 2000s, when the paranormal television shows started,
Right.
it really for me was therapy. I watched everything I could get my hands on because every time I saw somebody who had been through what I had been through, I realized it wasn't just me. And I think one of the reasons that I've put myself out there as a paranormal survivor is that I want people to know it's not just you. It happens to people, and it's totally okay, because I think as humans, if we can wrap our brains around something, that's sort of the beginning of healing our hearts and our souls. And at least for me, if I need to heal from something emotionally, understanding it intellectually first really helps me. So just letting people know it's a thing. And then um, about 5 years ago, I met and became very good friends with Andrea Perrin, who is the oldest daughter from the Perrin family, whose family is the subject of the first Conjuring movie. And she and I work very closely together now. And both of us paranormal survivors, our experiences very much the same and also very much different. And so my goal moving forward is to band not only with Annie, but with other paranormal survivors to sort of create a group of people that anyone can go to when they're in crisis, because, nobody talks about it. There's a, if you're a victim of any kind of childhood abuse, there's a hotline for you, there's help for you.
Right.
But paranormal abuse is a kind of abuse because you're being abused, just not by a person.
So
And
start
so
over
it's,
for 1 second. I want to know,
yeah.
like, with the paranormal survivor, like, what is the, I guess, the symptoms that you have? What are the things that happen to you? What is this whole? I don't understand paranormal. What are the abuses that happen?
Well, you get sometimes a spirit will lay down on top of you and suffocate you in your sleep.
Like you can feel
Um,
this.
oh yeah, you feel like an invisible. I always thought it felt like a thing of like sheet wood. Because my dad was a woodworker and he built wooden boats, and he used to have this wood that was like the size of a door, and it
Yeah.
felt like somebody was pushing that on me, but I couldn't move. In my house for my mom in that house, there was some spirit sexual abuse. The thing got a little rapey with her.
Okay.
Thankfully, not with me. Um, you're terrified, right? It's freezing, then it's boiling, then their voices, at you. And
Are
then
these people that are spirits that were in the house before, or were they
it
past relatives or
can be,
Indian?
no, not past relative. It can be, but oftentimes it's something that's come from the ground. They're what we call earth spirits or elementals, or they're just interdimensionals. They're not even from this dimension. Now I'm getting all crazy on you, Michael.
No, you're good.
There are a
Because I've got
myriad of
so many
things
more
it can be.
questions.
Yes, it can be. It can be ghosts. It can be passed over spirits. It can be spirits of the earth. It can be elementals. It can be something that is demonic. It can be Indian spirits, because Indians tainted that ground because they didn't want us messing with that ground,
Yeah.
and I don't blame them. So, I mean, I blamed them when it was happening to me in my house, but I don't blame them now.
Right.
So there's
Right.
all different kinds of things that can happen to you when you live in a house that now some hauntings are great. It's the ghost of grandma and she smells like cookies and she's
Right.
wonderful. Some people's haunting experiences are fantastic. But for other people's, it's very negative. And in
Uh,
this house, it was, and it tore my family apart.
Like
Um,
literally, people, everyone was
Literally, the
feeling
three of
this,
us
and
were
like,
at each other's throats for the 4.5 years that we lived in that house. We were completely at each other's house. And it's an interesting thing. I tell this story all the time that my dad was a corporate engineer and he got transferred to whatever plant needed him. And he was a design engineer. And we moved about every 5 years. And every time we ever moved, my parents would fix up the house and we'd sell it for like twice what it was worth and move to the
right.
next house. When we bought that house, my parents tore it apart. I remember my mom taking out a bathroom with a sledgehammer when I was a kid. And then we moved. We got found out we were moving to California. We were all like, thank God. Well, my mom and I were anyhow. Thank God. And we couldn't sell the house. And we had to keep dropping the price and dropping the price we could not sell the house. So cut to, I was going to be a guest on Andrea's new show.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted me to find out about the house. So my best friend from junior high and I are friends on Facebook. She's like, I'll go take some pictures of the house and send them to you. She sent me these pictures of the house, and the house now looks as horrifying on the outside as it did on the inside. Of course, it was on the market and nobody had bought it. So I went to Zillow and looked it up, and it
Yeah.
was pretty much on the market for what my parents put it on the market for in 1980. Like it
And people still
hasn't,
weren't
it's
buying it.
just sat there. It hasn't increased in value, which is unheard of in our country in 42 years.
Yeah.
And it's all overgrown with vines now. And if you look at it from like Google Earth with the aerial shot, you can't even see the house because it's so covered with vines. It just looks like a giant, ivy patch. So it's now taken on the identity on the outside of what it looked like on the inside, even though my parents made it look very beautiful. But still on the inside, it was, I call it the haunted mansion with my
I'm
joke with my
telling you.
friends. We call
What
it the
about the
haunted
houses
mansion.
around it though? What are they like?
Do you know they look fine? They look
It's
fine
just the one that you guys had was is
for whatever reason. Yeah, although probably that whole neighborhood had a lot of stuff going on because that's very common that a whole neighborhood will. But for
so
whatever reason, because my mom was so psychic, Michael, and such a gifted medium that she beamed like a lighthouse, and I'm sure that attracted everything. And I didn't know about my gifts at the time, and I was little. And puberty, kids are putting on a lot of energy when they're in puberty. It's very common for spirits to come when people are in puberty.
yeah.
The cats return. And then again, my dad, for some reason, there are for folks on the autism spectrum, the spirits are very attracted to them, probably because of the different energetic plane that they function on.
Yeah.
So we were just sort of like a, hey, come and haunt us sort of family.
So
And
is there no
because,
way to get them out of the house? Like
well, there is for some people, there wasn't in this house. And I don't even know that we knew who to call in the 70s. I mean, you didn't
Ghostbusters.
know. Yeah, exactly. A
Yeah.
priest, but we weren't Catholic. And my father was a lapsed Catholic, so no priest was coming to the house. Um,
Gotcha.
we didn't know about, I mean, even when Andrea grew up in the Conjuring house, right? One day the Warrens just showed up on the doorstep. Like somebody told Ed and Lorraine Warren, this house is crazy. And they just showed up. But we didn't have that because nobody knew. And it was very much when you go to school, don't tell your friends because your friends will tell their parents and then we'll
Right.
have a problem. Because you worried at that time that, Child Protective Services would show up, or, now it's so common that people divulge it when they sell a house and people are thrilled, like, oh, I want to buy the haunted house. And it's like, woo, with the property value. But
Yeah.
it was very different. It was a different time. And so I don't want people to ever feel like that. And I invite people on my radio shows that are paranormal survivors to talk about what happened to them. I think a lot of people that are in the paranormal that work as investigators or have been featured on one of the shows with their own story have
Right.
some kind of a story to tell. It's almost like a refugee center, the paranormal community, for
What's
people
the
who have been
freakiest
through the.
story you've ever heard or even experienced? Like what's the one that you just go like, okay, way too far?
Okay, so when I was, I don't know, in junior high, we lived in that house, late elementary school, early junior high. And I was in my room and I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and I went to turn the light on and it wouldn't turn on. And I was running out to the hall to get to the bathroom where there was a light to get to the hall to turn the light on because I was freaked. And I got to the door and I heard something that literally sounded like, wah, 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 wah. And I
Uh-huh.
turned around and I swear to God, there was the evilest snowman I have ever seen. You didn't think I was going to say that, did you, Michael?
No, I
It
did
was
not.
a big snowman and it looked like a snowman. It had little twiggy arms and it had this really like sinister face with big black eyes. And it had
Right.
the hat and the scarf and the carrot and the whole frosty look. And it was waving its little arms back and forth, going, ha, 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 ha. And I thought, you know what? That I'm in hell. I mean, I was like in
Yeah.
sixth grade. This isn't what happens to sixth graders. This is the
No.
most horrible thing ever. I just wanted to watch the Love Boat and be left alone. It
So
was
what did you
horrifying.
do? Wait,
So
what yeah.
I ran to the bathroom and I came back from the bathroom like, oh my God. I turned the hall light on. I kept the bathroom light on. And then I reached into my bedroom like, and I turned the light switch on. The light came on and he was gone.
So now you didn't run to your parents' room because that's where I would have been if not out the window.
I was scared to tell my parents because I thought I was going crazy. I mean, I thought there was something, seriously wrong with me. I mean, that doesn't happen to normal people. And it actually came down to at one point, I sat down with my mom, who, had worked as a therapist, and my grandmother was a psychologist. So that was in our family. And
Hmm.
I said, my mom had been to therapy many times. And I said, I think I need to see a therapist. And she said, why? And I said, well, this happened and that happened and the invisible board and the snowman and this and that. And she just kind of sat there, looked like she was going to cry. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. She's sending me away. She said, honey, sit down. Let's talk about this house. And
there
that's
I
when she told me all the stuff she'd been hiding from me
yeah,
because she didn't want it to touch me.
I've interviewed a lot of people, right? And I hear this recurring theme of I don't want to tell anybody about my gift or the ghost or the
Sure.
spirits or the whatever because people think that they're crazy and they're going to be put away or they're going to be put on drugs or something like
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely.
That is a You're right. There needs to be a whole like counseling center for
Yeah.
people of the paranormal.
Yeah, I
Um,
do what I can. We do what we can, and eventually, when I open, my goal is to open a couple of spiritual centers here in Southern California, in both of the places that I live, and that will be a part of it. Is just a place where paranormal survivors can come, almost like an AA meeting, right, or some
yeah,
kind of a crisis meeting, and just sit down and talk to people who've gone through the same thing, and just get a coffee maker and some donuts and you're all ready to go for let's sit down and talk about our paranormal stuff because it is a kind of trauma, right? It's just
yeah,
trauma being caused by, I mean, if you told somebody, I don't sleep at night because I got bit by a dog, or
right.
I can't go in the water because I saw a shark, everybody would think, oh, they would totally understand. But if you say, I can't sleep at night because a ghost scared the crap out of me, people are like, and what? No, really, why can't you? I mean, I
Yeah,
sleep, and my friends will tell you, Michael, I sleep with the light on unless I'm sleeping with someone else.
uh-huh.
I sleep with the light on and I sleep with the TV on because as a kid, those were things that kept the spirit activity away. The electricity of the light and the TV kept it away. So I
So
sleep with both.
how do you help people now that come to you and they say I've got these spirits that are around me, they won't leave me alone, I can't afford to move, I'm not sleeping in my car. How do
First
you help
first
them
of all,
now?
it's just about listening. It's about listening, and it's about teaching people mantras. You can ask for white light protection, ask for the white light to surround you. You can ask there things you can do every night, things you can say, protections you can bring in, things you can wear on you, crystals. There's all kinds of different things you can do. Sage, Palo
Hmm.
Santo, to raise the positivity in your house, to raise the vibration of your house so that they're not as welcome there. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you got to move. I mean, I used to always laugh. There was a show on Discovery Channel called A Haunting. It was very popular, like in the mid 2000s. And every single episode ended with the family in their pajamas running out to the car. Someone's got the baby, someone's got the dog. They're throwing the doors open. They drive
Yeah,
away and never come back, which is how the Amityville Horror ends, right? With the Lutzes just saying, we can't, and
yeah.
going to a hotel. Um, some houses you just have to move, you have to break up with it, but in some instances you can clear the energy, and there's some spirits that can be moved on, and they're you just kind of keep them away, you put a barrier up and let them know, and I do that. I do house clearings for folks.
Do you make a
Most of them,
difference? Do you see a difference between, I don't know if it's terminology or if there's an actual difference between, say, ghost and spirits? Is there a difference between those two? Or are they the
to,
same?
to me there really aren't. I mean,
Okay.
there is a soul and a spirit. Spirit's a word we use a lot, right? I use it for God as a
Yeah.
synonym for God. We do have a spirit and we also have a soul. Some people believe, and I do as well, that your spirit is you. So, Michael, when you pass, your spirit will always be Michael Jackson, and it will be somewhere where it can be accessed.
Okay.
Your soul will reincarnate and move on, and maybe next time become, Bob Clark, or Sally Jones, or whoever it becomes, Rover. It'll go different places and become different things. But the essence of who you were here is your spirit, I believe. And well, that's why sometimes when you go to a medium and you want to talk to grandma, and maybe she died 50 years ago,
Hmm.
you can still access her spirit and get information from her, even though her soul has reincarnated already.
Oh, see, that's a brand new concept for me, is the separation of the soul and the spirit.
Yeah.
And so the soul, I guess, in your definition of it, doesn't have a consciousness attached to it.
No, the soul is you. I think it has all the consciousness attached to it.
And then the spirit then
But the
is.
soul doesn't have, so my soul, right,
Mhm.
doesn't have a gender, doesn't have an ethnicity, doesn't have an age, doesn't live in a time. It travels where it's needed to grow. So it comes to different lives. It comes here or goes wherever souls go. Maybe it's not just the earth, other planets, learns lessons every time, right? Moves. from life to life, growing and learning, having the experience of being all different things, male, female, non-binary, all different ethnicities, all different religions, different body types. But
Okay.
the spirit, as it's been explained to me, is who you are in each incarnation. Because that's important too, because you, as Michael Jackson, have touched this earth, and that's an important thing. But your soul needs to be Michael Jackson for 90 years and then needs to stop being Michael Jackson and move on and be the next thing and learn the next set of lessons
Okay.
and get the next set of gifts.
Gotcha. Well,
It's a lot.
it is a lot. I'm
that's
just like
that's a lot.
overwhelmed
You
with it
didn't
right
set
now.
up for that, did you?
No, I did not.
It's not. We're not talking about who wore what on the red carpet here, folks.
No, we are not. You know what? We didn't even talk about how you combine your mediumship
Sure,
with your I'm going to use the word religion as our
sure.
yeah, that
Spirituality.
spirituality with
It's all. I
religion,
guess
with
it's all in my spirit. Sure.
traditional religion. That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking at. And how do you combine those two things? Like
Well,
people
it's. Mhm.
usually don't see them as coexisting.
I'm not traditionally religious. I mean, I think that's part of it. The way that I look at Christianity, Judaism, Muslim religion, I don't look at them as traditional. I find the mysticism in everything. And for me, growing up Presbyterian, which I always call a coffee cake religion, because
Uh,
when we went as a kid, infrequently, I remember like a guy would get up and talk a little bit about God, something about Jesus, and then say, and we have lovely coffee cake and
in the
punch
social hall.
downstairs. And people would run like Godzilla was chasing them to the basement to get these refreshments. And it wasn't until 40 years later when I became ordained, and I'm part of the Los Angeles Queer Interfaith Clergy Council, representing my church, as many of the pastors at my church are. And the first day they served us this amazing coffee cake, and I hadn't
Uh-huh.
had coffee cake that great since I was a practicing Presbyterian. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this, but that's about all I remember, right?
It
So
is true because that's when I used to go to church. I'm like, when is this over so we can go to the social
exactly.
hall and get something to
Where's the
eat?
Oreos and the punch?
Right.
I didn't so I didn't grow up in a church where I felt very oppressed by church. I grew up in a very open and able to ask any questions I wanted to from my mom. But my mom, how I was raised on Jesus was that Jesus was this, like a metaphysician, right? He was a healer. He was a rebel. He connected directly with God and passed those messages on. He was a prophet. He was a proudly Jewish and a wonderful rabbi.
Right.
And he kind of was doing his own thing when most of the world was either polytheistic Roman or, very Orthodox Jewish. And he sort of broke out of his own upbringing with this new thing
Right.
that, didn't become Christianity until years after he died.
Lots and lots
Um,
of years.
I,
Yes.
I don't think that traditionally what many religious people, many religious Christians do, to me, have anything to do with Jesus. I love and admire them and appreciate them for what they've decided to do with their lives. But I think sometimes it's a limited scope of what Jesus was. So I think Jesus was magic. So to me,
Excellent.
mixing Jesus and magic is completely natural. And that Christ consciousness that you see in people, not just in Jesus of Nazareth, but in other people and in Buddha, in many other people that we love and admire as historical and humane and spiritual figures. My mom believed, and I do too, that there was a thing called the Christ consciousness, that it was
Hmm.
sort of a ball of love and God that sometimes popped into a living person when they had something they needed to do. Martin Luther King, Harvey Milk, Abraham Lincoln, when he was trying to pass the Emancipation Proclamation. That sometimes people are overtaken by this with a mission, as
Yeah.
Jesus was. I mean, he definitely had a mission while he was here. He came for a short period of time. He had a mission and then he was gone. And we see that so much in humanity. Somebody rises up from nowhere with a mission, and when the mission happens, then they're gone, and oftentimes martyred. And I think that has something to do with the Christ consciousness. I haven't figured all that out yet, but I do think that's a thing. So,
I think you're figuring out a lot of it. I mean, I'm looking at messages here, like Keith put up a message that Sheena's salad bar analogy is why I wanted her as the interfaith pastor at our church. She's amazing. So
oh, thank you, Keith. Keith is my mentor as a pastor.
awesome,
He's the
Keith.
senior pastor at my church. Yeah. So yeah, spiritual salad bar. I mean, that's what you're calling this episode, right? Because that's so. Do you want me to talk about that?
We need to talk about it just a little bit, and then we're going to show people how to get in touch with you. But yeah, just tell me a little bit more about the salad bar.
So we talked a little bit when we talked last week about interfaith, and I believe that everyone, whether they want to be or not, is interfaith, because interfaith is the pie that is the world. So if you are a Jewish person, raised
Right?
Jewish, always been Jewish, attend synagogue every week, but you understand and respect that there are Christians and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus and atheists and you're interfaith because you're living your piece of the pie and you're acknowledging the whole pie exists.
Okay.
So I think of it like this. When you go to a salad bar, and I just went to my first Sizzler salad bar post-COVID. It was very exciting last week. There's so many things on that salad bar that you couldn't eat everything, and you don't want to eat everything.
Right.
So you pick up the things that you like and you put them on your plate, which is your
Right.
spiritual palate. And you take the things that you don't like and you leave them where they are.
Yes.
Nobody hates onions more than me.
Right.
But I
Beets.
don't go to Sizzler and say, why? Why are there onions here? Because those onions are for someone else.
Okay.
So then we all sit down, right, at a table in a restaurant, and everybody's plate looks different. But nobody's mad at anybody else because their plate is different. You just think, well, this is the salad I took, and that's the salad they took. Even your best friends, your plates don't look the same when you're sitting down.
Right.
So why can't we do that for our spirituality, Michael?
That
Why
no, that
can't
that's a good question. Why can't we do that? Because um, you're absolutely right about this. I can leave the beets. I can leave the slot the peaches that are like kind of cushy and all that kind of stuff, and eat all the crunchy green stuff.
Sure.
But
Hashtag leave the beats.
leave the beets. There we go. Now, but why can't we do that in
Right.
actual life?
Why is it so angry when it comes to spirituality? Just understanding that everybody is different and
Because
everybody
someone's got to
wants,
be right and someone's got to be
because
wrong.
we're so fearful that we might be wrong. We're so fearful that someday somebody's going to say, you know what? The onions, that was the thing, and you
Yeah.
never took them.
Right.
Um, we're so terrified that we're going to be wrong and that we're missing the key to it all. But heck, if I found out someday that the key to salvation was onions, I just make myself eat those onions. I mean, if you realize
Um,
that you miss something, and that's the beautiful thing, you can change at any time. I used to have an allergy to beets. I used to leave the beets,
There we go.
but now I don't, and I love beets, so now I put beets on my salad bar. So you can say, I don't believe in reincarnation, and then one day you can have a dream about reincarnation. You can wake up and say, you know what? I believe in reincarnation. And it's okay. That's the beautiful thing about this life is every single day of your life, Michael, you can change. You can wake up and say,
Yep.
I didn't used to believe in this, but now I do. Or you can say, I used to have this really bad habit and now I don't.
Right.
And that's okay. So spirituality is a spectrum and it's ever flowing. And at any time, you can add anything onto your palate or you can let anything go from your palate. And, my parents were both painters. And if you looked at my father's palette, he painted mostly boats. It was all blues and greens and grays and browns. My mother painted mostly sunsets and fall scenes. So her palette was all orange and red and yellow and black and all these pink. And that's okay. Everybody's palette can look different. And I think we need to give each other such a break and go to the spiritual salad bar, take what we want and leave what we don't, and not be so angry about what other people have chosen to take, because we're all part of this giant interfaith pie that is humanity. We are all one human family.
Yeah,
And we're never
I
going to really get that
I
if
love
we
that.
don't start to love each other for who they are. And it's hard. It's hard to look across the spiritual lines, look across the political lines, look across the cultural lines and say, I don't always agree with what you do, but I love and respect your ability to do it. When I started out doing a public access show. That's how I got stuck with this Sheena Metal name. And at the time, the show before me was my now very good friend Allison Arngrim, who grew up on Little House on the Prairie, was doing an HIV/AIDS activism show. And then I did my crazy, wild rock and roll music show. And the neo-Nazis had the show after me. So it
Whoa.
was the three of us. And we came in every Saturday, and the three of us did these shows. And I had this wonderful program director, and his whole attitude was everybody has a right to do a show. And if you don't like it, change the channel.
Now, how
So
did the three of you get along when you got into the room together?
no
Was
problems. I
everybody
was
all
in the
good?
middle. So I saw her and I saw them. I was right in the middle. Not a single problem. Nobody had a problem. And I wore a long blonde wig and looked like Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. And there was all kinds of metal people in there. We never had the neo-Nazis would show up and they were all like clean shaven and their armbands were. Nobody had a problem. Everybody was civil with each other. And I certainly have, no urge to join the neo-Nazi party. And I'm sure there were a lot of heavy metal guys there in the early 90s that were a little nervous about the HIV/AIDS show. But you know what? Everybody got along because if you don't like it, just change the channel. That's if it's not for you,
Yeah.
then just change your channel. But
So, do you
we don't
actually
have.
think we can, if we, let's say we do have all these things, right? We've got
Mhm.
all these beliefs, we've got all these systems, we've got all these people,
Sure.
and we say get along and change the channel, just go over there and do this. But then you've
Yeah.
got some people who say, well, my channel is the right channel, and I'm going to make you change your channel,
Right.
and I'm just going to take over your channel
Right.
until it looks like my channel, and
Right.
then that's why we can't get along and
Right.
have nice things.
And that's what we need. Right. This is why we can't have nice things.
Exactly.
But we need to try to find a way to meet each other in the middle somewhere, to have a civility somewhere in the middle. I grew up down here an hour south of Los Angeles, and I'm back now fixing
Hmm.
up my childhood home. I'm sitting at my mom's desk right now, which is so amazing. Um, I remember as a kid, there were so many things about me I couldn't talk about living down here. The fact my house was full of dragons and fairies, and the fact I believed in reincarnation, the fact I was bisexual. There were so many things that mom and I would talk about. We called them inside the house things.
Right.
Now I've grown up and this place has grown up, but it's still a place that needs a lot of work. And so I spend my time down here with folks that are very spiritually and politically and culturally opposed to who I am in many ways, but I find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes you realize somebody's different and you think, well, this person, right, with their political flag flying and their let's vote out this person and do this, and this is fake and this isn't real and fake news, and I think this is a person that I'm probably not going to be best friends with. This is not going to be part of my tribe, but there's no reason why I can't live next to this person and see them at the mailbox and say hello and share a hamburger with them at the block party.
Right.
We don't have to make everybody into us. There's this beautiful meme, Michael, that says the key to happiness is trying not to turn everyone into you. And I don't want everyone to be me. Everybody doesn't have to believe what I believe. Everybody doesn't have to like what I like. I know there are people in my life that probably think I'm completely wackadoodle for what I do. I'm okay. And also, everybody doesn't have to know everything about you. You don't need to go to the grocery store in a very conservative area and let it, well, I'm a psychic and I'm
Right.
letting you know I'm buying avocados and I'm a psychic and I'm queer. Nobody needs to know that. It's just not,
We don't
you know
need to
what I
know
mean?
that. So, and how does that work in your world? Like, seems to be working out fairly well, right? Where people
Sure.
just know the parts of you they need to know about you, right?
Sure. Live and let live, right? I mean, that's a
Yeah,
very Jesus attitude.
I
Live
like
and
it.
let live. Let people be who they are. And show them the respect that you respect who they are. You don't have to They don't have to be you. You don't have to be them. I mean, there are things that terrify me in this world. People's wanting to take everybody's rights and restrictions,
Hmm.
but I try to find a way to understand the fear around the different things that scare them. And I try to have sympathy and empathy towards them, because otherwise you spend your entire life just preaching to the choir
Yeah.
and you never expand yourself. You never get to know somebody who's different. And
I
that's
think that's the hard part, right? Is in other words, someone says, you know, fire is the way, and then someone says ice is the way, and then
right.
for the fire and ice to get together and say, okay, let me hear what you have to say, fire. I'm gonna just
Yeah.
stand up here for a minute, but to go ahead and talk.
Yeah. Just listen. So that's what I
Yeah,
do. I just listen. And I listen to people talk about their fears and their what they're worried about. What is the root of why they feel the way they feel? What is the fear? And I hope and somehow it's helping and healing. And my hope
yeah,
is to open a spiritual center down here, eventually one in Los Angeles and one here, but this one first because this is where I'm being called. And hopefully a place where people feel open, no matter what their spiritual background is, to come and talk about how they feel, even if they just want to yell at me because I'm not evangelical. Okay, I'll listen to that.
yeah. I want to show people you've got a couple of ways for people to get in touch with you. You've got
Sure.
your, I just want to bring it up here. You've got sheenametalspiritual.com,
That's my
and
website. Yeah.
I think that's probably your best website for people to find you. And then you've also got raisingthevibration .org, and people can get in touch with you there. Should they leave you an email? Should they
Yeah, or
call up?
text
What's the
me. I
best
mean,
thing?
you can text me, you can email me. My phone number is there at Sheena Metal Spiritual. My email is there. Come and find me.
I think people
I'm
should.
so accessible.
It's amazing. I definitely want to talk to you some more. I think we're going to have you back on, and we'll
I'd
talk
love
about
it.
all the other things we didn't talk about
You
today.
let me know. I'm here for
So,
you.
all right. We'll see you next time. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Michael.
Sheena.
Thank you so much.